Hello, welcome back. My name is JPGZ and this is Rosewood Takeover Episode 5, or as the title says, The Rosewood Massacre. But before we get into that, I want to introduce 3 new mods to the series. Mod number 1 is the Common Sense mod. What it does exactly, I'm not sure, but it's common sense and that's what we need. Mod number 2 is the Weapon Condition Indicator, very simple but effective. And mod number 3 is the Has Been Read mod. This will help me identify what books I've read already and which ones I haven't. Anyway, if it's your first time watching Rosewood Takeover, I'd advise you start with episode 1. I've linked it in the description below. And while we're on the subject of watching, only 91% of you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not already, do me a favour, hit the big red subscribe button or click my logo in the bottom right. I've also added a subscribe link in the description if that's easier for you to get to. I'm on the push for 500 subs, so if you do enjoy, do it, it's free. Back to the action though, and on day 43 we arrived back at the station after our looting run and acquiring our new step van. Today we're going to push on to day 60, which will mean we will have the max population of zombies in the game. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a massacre. So I still have all the remaining loot left in the step van, and I think for the remainder of today, getting that out is going to be my plan. I still have 2 injuries, so ideally I want to nurse these back to full strength before taking on any more Zeds. But let's talk a little more about the goals for today's episode. As I mentioned earlier, I want to push on to day 60 where we will hit the max population for the series, and I have a small plan of how I want to get there. My fitness and strength could do with some work, and I want to clear as many Zeds as possible on the way to what we will call Day P. P is for population, that is. I aim to spend the day out killing Zeds, then a rest day cutting down trees at our usual spot whilst doing some exercise. These have fallen by the wayside recently, and getting some continuity may help bump us up. If my calculations are correct, this should give me 9 days out killing Zeds and 8 days cutting down trees. Obviously my plans never seem to run smoothly, but let's give it a go. You have probably noticed I've run out of bookcase room, so for now they're sitting in the corner. And I didn't forget your comments in the last video. I grabbed a pipe wrench from the cupboard, headed downstairs and plumbed in the sink and the rain collectors. Somehow this gives me purified water. My aim is to sort out what items go where in the garage, but for now I'll just drop things in as and when. Maybe we can do a base building episode at some point in the future. I even turned on the oven for the first time today and cooked a packet of mac and cheese. I have no idea what I can actually cook or what on earth to use it for. So if you have any tips on cooking or making my food last longer, drop them in the comments. My left hand is still infected, so before bed I gave it one last wipe down, bandaged it back up and headed to bed, ready to get started on day 44. I decided to go with woodcutting on day 44. We attached a trusty crowbar to our back in case of any Zeds that needed taking care of, and grabbed our wood axe ready to begin. Still in pain with our hands, we took a daily dose of the painkiller and grabbed our sheep ropes to start making stacks of logs. We grabbed some food ready for our day in the trees and made our way out. On our way we stopped off by a few of the corpses to grab as many sheep ropes as I could. This is something I probably need to be doing while we're out hunting the Zeds, as by day 60 I suspect we will have a fair few logs collected. I began chopping wood at 9 AM. Every 2 trees I would stack 4 logs to reduce the weight I had on me. It's quite clear to see that the unfit trait really isn't helping the plan I have. After 8 trees I'm exhausted and it's time for a sit down. After an hour's break it's time to get back to cutting. Another 6 trees and I ran out of sheep ropes, so I looted a few corpses nearby for some extra. Grabbed a quick bite to eat for lunch, had another rest break, then back to chopping. A quick smoke break was followed by our first workout session. 30 minutes of the finest squats you will see this side of the Rosewood fire station. As I hit late evening, it was time to head back to base. I stored the wood cutting items in the locker near the back door, ready for when I head back out next time. Did a quick spot check on the generator to make sure I had enough fuel left and that there were no issues. Made sure all the crops were watered and then headed back inside. I put the Paris in the Rain VHS on the TV, sat down to relax and had some dinner. This is what I would class as the good life. I caught a little more of the first aid book, then went to sleep, ready for day 45. On day 45 as planned, I'm heading out to start clearing more Zeds. With day P fast approaching, I need to ensure that the increase in population doesn't affect me. With my lack of knowledge behind the population aspect of the game, I don't know whether the last few days increase more or whether it's a steady stream across the period. Before I headed out, I rebandaged both of the wounds, topped up the water bottles and hit the road. Today the plan is to start by the PD and work my way all the way up the high street to clear as many as possible. This isn't going to be a one-day thing, it's going to take me a fair few days, and I'm still not comfortable with larger groups, but getting this section of the area clear before day 60 would be the goal. At the PD we came across a single single Zed on the west side and a group of 3 over the chain link fence. I dispatched them with my trusty crowbar, cut the clothes into sheep ropes, then proceeded to walk around the perimeter. We're using the crowbar as in the comments of the last video you actually mentioned it does in fact improve the maintenance skill. This could become helpful down the line for when we begin to move into the prison or the military base. I heard a few groans from inside the PD, so next up we took a look inside through the east entrance. Safe to say there were a few more than I expected after spawning here in this life. I started by pulling one out through the door, again nothing too strenuous, and as I stepped a little further in I noticed there were actually a lot more than I expected, and as usual, shit myself and retreated back out the door. The larger numbers began to come out, and this time I stood my ground and began to bash in the skulls. It was a little overwhelming, but the door really helped to funnel them out in a line. A few more began to creep out and I kept swinging. Once they were dead, I headed back in. I managed to hit the next level along blunt, but then backed off back outside as a final few made the push forward. Once they were clear, I headed back in to check back around the PD and ensure it was clear. I went room to room, finding one more Zed inside near the reception. After checking everything at the PD was clear, we headed back outside, ripped all the clothes into sheep ropes, collected anything that could be of use like guns or first aid supplies, and dropped them at the side of the road ready for when we do our next loot run. Next up was the court building, and I had a couple of stray Zeds lurking around the side of the building, so that's where we started. We headed through the front of the building to the left side, which looks to be a church, then headed into the main 2-story building. I could hear the groans of the zombies nearby, so instead of rushing into rooms, I did a sweep around the ground floor, then headed back around going room to room. There was a singular Zed of crowd control at the front, so I headed out to kill him, and then the only other Zed I spotted was this guy sitting in one of the offices. A little bit of a jump scare, but easy enough to take care of. I suspect the bulk of the noise I can hear is upstairs, but as it's getting late, I grabbed the water dispenser from the staff room and headed back to base. It was a slow walk back as the dispenser was breaking my back under the weight, but once we were back, we placed the dispenser at the top of the stairs and grabbed some dinner. Luckily, after God knows how many days, our left hand finally healed. Once the right is fixed, that will be us back to full health. I headed back to the bedroom, read some more of the first aid book, and then headed back to bed, ready for day 46. So on day 46, I'm going to spend another day out on the road killing Zeds. And before I head out, I'm going to transcribe the journal, just because I feel like I've not done it for some time. I should have also kept a track of how many zombies I killed yesterday, but I didn't, so as of now, I've killed 256, and let's see what we get to by day 60. I started the day off at the PD again, as we did spot a large group of zombies last night up to the north. They seem to have taken a liking to the PD, so time to clear it out again. I used the trusty window strategy, let them fall through, hit them in the head. It makes it really easy to clear when you're using the surroundings. After the PD was clear, I headed a little north where there was another group of 4 for me to take care of. Next, it was to clear upstairs in the court. Yesterday we cleared the downstairs, and I'm 100% sure there are some Zeds upstairs. I entered through the side again as I did yesterday, then headed straight up the staircase to the rear of the building. I found the first by the toilets, quickly dispatching it as I heard banging on the door downstairs. As I headed down, I opened the door, and just the one came in. Once it was dead, I headed back up the stairs, and the same as yesterday, I wandered the corridors first. Although I could hear 1 or 2 in the rooms, I saw nothing until the final turn, and as usual, I panicked. I could not get my aim right, I forgot all the buttons, and all of a sudden, it got me. I struggled, and struggled some more. And after a lot of luck, I managed to kill the Zed and check the status of this injury. Again, my luck had come through, but after getting rid of an injury yesterday, I've now got another laceration. I managed to get bandaged up and finished off going room to room around the top floor. We found a number of cigarettes, not really anything of use, killed another zombie, and the court was clear. On the way home, we grabbed a stack of sheet ropes and the bits we got from the PD yesterday, and once back at base, I emptied the sheet ropes into the locker, retreated some of the wounds, leveling up our first aid, and finished off the first aid book. I needed some painkillers before heading to bed, and once they kicked in, we fell asleep, ready for day 47. Day 47 was another tree day. I headed straight down to the locker, grabbed the ropes and axe, and then set off to chop some wood. As you can see, somehow the map glitched out as we left the fire station, so after a quick restart, we got to work. I won't bore you with all the details of cutting down trees, but for the first time, we had a Zed come and join us, and again, I nearly got caught out with how slow the axe is. Today's exercise was push-ups, and after a long day and many logs cut, we headed back to base to rest up and start on the first electrics book. I was back out killing Zeds on day 48. A little bit of fear setting in now on our food situation. I only have 4 crops planted and tinned stock in Rosewood is starting to become a rarity. Now I had the PD and the court buildings clear, it's time to go a bit further up the high street in search of food. I started off by searching around the perimeter of the court just as a precaution to ensure it was clear, and in the parking lot to the east I spotted numerous groups, so I decided to give it a miss. I decided to head back to the high street and ran into a couple of Zeds at the crossroad. Not enough to give us any problems though. I then heard banging from a shop across across the road. This was Mama Fudgington's. The door was locked, so I decided to give it a miss till the zombies broke out later on, but I did find out that there were some apartment blocks upstairs. Again, the sound of zombies deterred me, so we went and continued up the high street to look for more food. A couple more Zeds to take care of, then we noticed the 24-hour zipper market. I cleared the remaining Zeds outside, then headed in. As we headed in, there were another 2 zombies to take care of, and once they were dead, we decided to loot all the food in the store. With a full backpack and it was getting late, I decided to make the trip back home. As I went past the PD, I collected the rest of my sheep ropes, and when we arrived back at base, I dropped them in the locker. I spent the remainder of the night reading the electronics book that I'd started yesterday, and once it was finished, I headed to bed ready for day 49. After our progress up the high street yesterday, I decided to go back on day 49. Before I left the base, I rebandaged the wounds and hit the road. Yesterday we left some Zeds banging down a door at McFudgington's, so first on our list is to see if they've broken out. As they arrived, everything was still intact and the banging had gone. I gave the door a swift knock to get them moving again and decided to proceed further up the high street. I found a couple of Zeds knocking about outside the hairdressers, and after a few swift blows, I found myself a new firefighter outfit and a helmet. I felt like a little change from the hockey one. After inspecting the PZ map, I found that above these shops there were a couple of apartments, and apartments could mean more food, so we went in to continue looting. In the first apartment I found numerous cans of food, exactly the result I was looking for. In the second I found myself an M14 rifle. Now I don't know the guns in this game very well, but I'm suspecting this isn't a bad one. I also found more food in the kitchen, which adds to the current haul, then headed outside to drop the loot at the curb. In the third apartment I could already hear a Zed, so after proceeding in with caution, I was shocked to find there was 3 of them stood around the table. I fought them through the corridor and led them outside to the death. I decided to proceed a little further, taking on another couple of Zeds outside what I realised was the medical centre. If there was anywhere I was going to stock up on medical supplies, this was the place. Again, I proceeded in with caution, finding a Zed as soon as I walked through the door. I then checked each room so I could clear out any Zeds inside before beginning the looting. Once everything was clear, I looted every cupboard, cabinet, toilet and shelf I could find. And my god, this was a haul of first aid supplies. I mean, I feel like I'm set for the rest of the playthrough after this. I decided to head back to base so I could drop off the first aid supplies, then run back later to collect my M14 and the rest of the food. We ran into a small group at the crossroad on the way back and was also joined by a Zed from inside the bank. After they were cleared, we got back to base, filled up the first aid cupboard and went straight back out. We collected the rest of the items from the curb and headed back to base, and I decided to have a flex with my M14. Something I'll probably never ever fire, but it looks cool, doesn't it? Back at base we did some more roleplay like we'd just raided the place. Think SWAT team storming a building. I added the M14 to the table of goodies, added the rest of the food to the cupboard and got started on Metal Book 1. Once it struck midnight we headed to bed, ready for day 50. Day 50. Man, I would never have expected to have gone this long with only one death. I mean, I know I haven't really played risky, but that comes with experience. I've really enjoyed getting back out and killing the Zeds, so again today I'm going to go out for another run. This time though, I'm going to sweep around the back of the fire station. Once I was fed and watered, I headed back out and jumped the fence. We found a small group of 3 not too far up the street, and the more I thought about it, I don't think I've looted the houses on this street yet. Once I killed the lurkers, I checked the first house on the street. Just a can of dog food on the food front and not much else. I did however find my first hotties mag in one of the garages, along with some other useful tools. The next house offered a nice selection of canned goods, some wine laying around on the floor, and bits of ammo and first aid supplies upstairs. I also decided to use the bathtub to get my clothes washed for the first time in a while. We killed off another couple of Zeds by the burnt out building. I won't bore you with what loot we found. No loot in the second burnt out building, but I did find a nice selection of materials and metalworking supplies along with a full gas can in a garage not long later. At 8 PM we headed back to base, dropped off a full backpack in the garage and headed out to collect the rest of the loot. Again, from the comments of the last video, someone mentioned about leaving loot out on the curb to collect it when you drive around later. Me, I just do numerous trips wasting my time. Once I got back to base I had a good sort out through the loot we acquired today, and once that was all done I headed to bed ready to take on day 51. On day 51 we took a break and headed back to the trees, this time in nothing but my underwear. I think this is the first time I've actually seen my hair in the game since I started playing, and it looks like it's grown. Is that an actual thing? I need to get back on with the exercise again. I keep forgetting about it, but let's try at least for the next 10 days to do it. As it is at the trees, a very quiet day, apart from motoring round, taking breaks because I'm exhausted and doing squats, so there isn't a right lot of stuff to talk about. I'm hoping to clear this whole side at some point, but as my axe broke it was finally time for home, and when I got back I spent the remainder of the evening reading the metal book and then headed to bed ready for day 52. For the next 3 days we continued on at the trees. There's 2 reasons I'm not being as in depth as I usually am. 1, I didn't have my recorder on for day 52, and 2, nobody wants chance to see a tree cutting simulator. But I wanted to finish that run of trees as we spoke about yesterday, so I got to work. Once I get something stuck in my head, I get motivated to complete it. On the morning of day 53, this is where we were with the trees, and on the morning of day 54, this is where we were. I kept up with the exercise numerous times a day, and by late evening on day 54, the run was clear. I mean, look at the amount of logs on the floor. That's going to take some time and sheets to put them into sets of 4. I saw the first zombie in days, but as exhausted as I am, I'm heading back to base. The crops finally needed watering as there hasn't been any rain in days. Then I headed to the bedroom and finished the metalworking book and headed to bed, ready to get back out there on day 55. Day 55, man, it feels a long time since we started this series. 6 days until day P and the focus is now fully on the high street. I'm not sure just yet if there's going to be any deaths in the last 6 days, but let's really push it now. I started day 55 putting the fireman outfit back on, and for some reason I couldn't remember where my gas mask or my helmet were. After watching the footage back from day 51, I definitely dropped them in the corridor, so God knows where they went. We got geared up and headed back towards the high street. I'm starting to realise it takes a lot of time walking there and back each day, so today we're going to work on clearing some rooms above Mama Fudgington's so we have a little safe house on the high street. We spotted a couple of Zeds heading around the back of the PD, so we headed there to kill them off first. As we caught up to them, we noticed another 3 of them on the other side of the fence, so over we hopped to finish them off too. We dropped off some more sheet ropes by the main walkway, then headed further up the high street. As we arrived at the door of the apartments, we headed in and went room to room. Behind the first door there was a Zed standing waiting for us, but as I was prepared this time, it wasn't too much of an issue. There were no Zeds in apartment number 2, a Zed just disappeared in apartment number 3, and when I say disappear, I've no idea where he went. And finally, no Zeds in apartment number 4. The banging you can hear is from downstairs. That's the zombie in Mama Fudgington's that still hasn't broken out yet. We went back to apartment 3 and the Zed was back, so we took him down with ease and decided this would be the safe house for now. I headed round the back of the shop with the hopes of an open door so I could clear and check for food. We had a little crowd control to take care of first, but once they were dead, I checked the door and it was locked. I checked around each of the cars in the car park to see if any would be of use. All of them had little to no fuel, and in this one we did find a key, but it was completely out of gas. I did find a gas can in a small truck, but I really don't need a car just yet, so decided to leave it there. There was a group of 5 wandering around the back of the court, so they were the next target. My aim was to pull 2 or 3 of them away from the group, but I ended up pulling 4 of them. I gained another skill point in maintenance, and once they were finished off, I grabbed more sheet ropes and headed back to the high street. As it hit 9 PM, we headed back into the apartment block to clear each room of any useful items. It was in the dark, so it's not very clear footage, but we found a good supply of canned food, then headed to bed, ready for day 56. On day 56, I didn't put my recorder on, but to give you a quick rundown, we used the common sense mod to pry open the door at Mama Fudgington's, killed the Zed that was inside, looted the office building next door, and cleared the bank. I also grabbed these 3 water dispensers to take back to base at some point, but on to day 57. Recorder is on, let's go. So for the next 4 days the focus is solely on the high street, and from some investigation I realised there's a food store / supermarket up the high street. If I can get there and clear it, that will give us a huge boost on the food for the foreseeable future. We started the day by heading into the Palm Travel shop, not a lot of useful items but yet another building cleared. I quickly realised that this gave us backroom access to a lot of stores on the street, so we got to work working through each door. Firstly was the hairdressers. It's a shame there's nobody working here still because I really need a trim. We checked over the legal offices but I found nothing to use apart from cigarettes and this water dispenser, so I dropped it on the curb ready for collection day. The last shop was a medical centre that we'd already looted up a couple of days back, so we headed out to the rear to check over the cars, then it was time to head upstairs and clear the rest of the apartments. I checked the 3rd apartment we found 3 Zeds in a few days ago and managed to scoop a couple of magazines that we hadn't read yet. We found a decent haul of food in one of the other apartments, so decided to use this as another safe house further up the high street to save some time. I collected every bit of food I could find and also found myself some tools, then headed back to safe house 2 to empty the backpack. As it was getting late, I started on the first foraging book, then headed back to bed ready for day 58. On day 58 we got straight to work. I began to make my way further up the high street. The first group of the day we met were sat outside the clothes store. As always, I lured them away in smaller numbers. Starting with the first one, we gained a skill point in nimble. Then the next 3, another 2, then the final 2. Next up were some more apartments, and as we went up the stairs there were 4 Zeds in the hallway. I was caught off guard by this guy as I entered the apartment, but on this occasion I didn't panic for once, and with the final apartment swept, that's the block cleared. Another trusty crowbar for the collection, more sheet ropes by the curb, and dropped all of the food back in the safe house. I checked the bookstore again, this time while I wasn't dying, but I think I have the majority of the skill books back at base, so I just collected any of the books for happiness. Next up we checked the Rosewood Community Buffet. No fresh food as expected, but lots of canned food again in the kitchen. I dropped all the loot by the curb this time so I could collect it at a later date, just saves another trip up and down the stairs. The last store on the street today is the clothes store, and as I approached the window there were a handful inside, so I decided to let them break through the window first. I then realised the door was open, but by this time one of them had already broken out. I went around the store grabbing as many sheet ropes as I could, and nearly got caught out by this ninja sat in the dressing room. I dropped all the sheet ropes back by the water dispenser, spent some more time reading the foraging book, then headed to bed, ready for day 59. On day 59 we headed back out in the fog. The area around the food store was clear, so I headed over to see if I could gain access. I checked all the way around the store and had no luck with an open door, and with only 11 hours left till day P, I decided to leave it and head back out to continue killing Zeds. First we headed to Jenny's table. I don't really have many expectations with the diners, as the food will most likely be rotten. We got access through the back door, checked around the seating area and checked the toilets, checked upstairs, not one Zed in sight. We headed back out the rear and made our way towards the motel. After a quick nosy through the window, we headed to the front and started clearing the Zeds. In all honesty, I was expecting a lot more up here than there actually is. Once that small group was taken care of, we headed further into the motel to kill the Zeds sat outside. They were pretty easy pickings, but we did draw the attention of another group to the east. We managed to grab ourselves another crowbar from the group down south, then killed the group to the east. And once all the Zeds in close proximity were finished, we began the process of grabbing the sheet ropes, dropped them by the side of the road, and next up was to check the motel. I just ran around opening the doors one at a time to see if any Zeds came flying out. At door number 3, we met the one and only Zed staying over whilst everything went bad. Even after we checked the reception and the little house, we found nothing of use. We headed back to Jenny's table for the night as it was getting late, and I realised I'd forgot to bring some food. I managed to grab some marinara from the kitchen to put me on for the night, did some more exercises, then headed back to bed, ready for day P. So we are finally here. The Project Zomboid Endgame. We now should have a maximum population in the game, and we have gone through the helicopter event and the water and power shutting off. Today we make one last Zed push and go for the food store to get ourselves in the best possible position for the endgame. Obviously there is still some way to go for our goals in this series, but there shouldn't be any more factors against us shutting down Rosewood. As we woke on day 60, we were hungry, so we grabbed some mustard from the kitchen and counteracted the unhappiness with some pop. There was a large group near the food store, so we headed over to clear before attempting the break-in. It took a little longer than expected as I didn't want to alert too many at once. Coming this far, I didn't want to get too confident and die on the last day. I added more sheet ropes to the pile and even found myself a fishing rod and tackle in one of the cars nearby. I found a key on the floor for the green van. This could be quite useful for getting food back to base if we managed to break in. With no fuel though, we had to improvise and use our water bottles to move gas from the step van. Now with a measly 5% fuel, here's to hoping we can make it back to base. We managed to pry open the door to the food store with a common sense mod and a crowbar. This has to be the most effective mod so far for me. Once inside, I did an entire sweep of the building looking for Zeds. I knew there was someone here because I could hear the groans. I checked around the ground floor with no luck, then headed upstairs to check the first floor. There it is, sat in what looks to be the manager's office. We killed this Zed, and the food is ours to take at leisure. Now it was clear we got to looting. I found another bucket in the laundry shop next door, something I've been looking for as someone mentioned these were good for watering crops back at base. We noticed these boxes by the rear door, and this is when I knew I hit the jackpot. The boxes were full of canned goods, and this is before I'd even touched the store. I headed back to the green van and chucked in everything I had so far. I grabbed all the sheet ropes and the crowbar from near the motel and put them in too. As it was only 3 PM, I decided to go and kill a few more Zeds over near Spiffos, just to boost that kill count for the final day. We checked a few cars for any additional fuel to get us home, and checked inside Spiffos to see if there are any more Zeds. As it approached 5 PM, we headed back to the van to make our last move. We hopped in the van, turned it on and headed for the rear of the food store. The aim was to park out back, loot as much as we could fit in before we had to head home. There was a little crowd at the rear for us to deal with, but again, the small numbers were easy to manage. Once dead, I headed inside and got to work. I started in the store looting around the shelves as I wanted to bag up as much as possible from inside. Then we could just get to work on the boxes. Once the bag was filled, we headed back to the van to put as much as we could inside. As the boot was already full, I had to fill the seats. For some reason I was having a real fight getting it in, and as it struck 10 PM, I knew I needed to get back to base. I don't know if it's due to the amount in the car or the Sunday driver trip, but the car seems really slow and sluggish. We were done though. We had fixed our food issues that had been haunting us for weeks, and now we could get back to base, reset and move on to the next phase. That's when I spotted them. A small group hanging around the crossroad between the PD and the fire station. My moodles were in tatters. I was extremely tired and decided to plough one down in the road. I drove past the rest and dumped the car. I ran inside with the hopes I could sleep through the night and take care of it tomorrow. But as I got inside, I could hear the banging. It was now or never. Extremely tired, I headed back out to try and clear. There was one at the rear door as I stepped out. Another one by the garage door. There were 3 by the window, and for some reason at this point in my headset I could hear one to my right. I just suspected it was a sound issue from them in front of me. That's when I turned to the right and saw him banging on the other garage door. How lucky I was to not be noticed. If I'd come forward, I would have been dead. I cleared the last one by the window, then the one lurking around the car park, and after I saw the large group out in the front field, I headed back inside as that was a tomorrow problem. I'd made it. I was back to base on day 60, max population reached, and now the real fun can start. We managed to bump the kill count up from 256 on day 46 to 406 on day 60. Again, pretty low, but successful for me. It's been a great journey so far. I've been learning so much on the way. Thank you to you, the viewers, for all the tips that have helped me progress, and I hope I'll see you all next time for episode 6. I'm JPGZ, love you, bye.